Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Show Wednesday edition. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show an actor who currently resides in Virginia and has appeared in numerous plays such as 1776, The Four Poster, and Oklahoma, and has had principal roles in films such as Evan Almighty with Steve Carell, Ghost Town, and the Book of Ruth. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, please welcome to the show the very talented actor, Robert Shepard. Hello, Robert. How are you?
Hello, Maurice. Such a pleasure to be with you today.
It's great having you on the show, man. I tell you, we're all going through this crazy pandemic. It's really difficult for actors to kind of navigate in this world of COVID-19. What's it been like for you as an actor during this time?
It has caused certainly some limitations. I've had some projects that have been postponed because of what was going on. But I have had some other opportunities, continued to do some voiceover work. And one of the things that I've done for years as a freelancer is I actually have worked as a standardized patient for Eastern Virginia Medical School. And we worked virtual a good portion of the year. So every week, just about, I had some work that I could look forward to and role play as a patient with various and sundry medical conditions.
Yes, yeah. What is it like on set, Robert, during this time as far as the COVID-19 testing goes?
Everybody is certainly being very, very cautious. One of the things you can expect is to get your temperature taken before you
Yeah.
actually interact. You'd be required, of course, to wear a face mask until you are in front of the camera. And so most of the sets I've been on since COVID have certainly been very careful. And I've had a couple of them because of the restrictions, such as with Screen Actors Guild, that actually I had a project that's been postponed just because the requirements are so complicated that they're still working to figure that out to see if they can make it happen.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. I've got a couple of auditions out there, and I'm just wondering what it's going to be like if I should happen to win one of those auditions. Then I have to go. So my wife's in the healthcare field, and she has to get tested twice a week, and it sounds like it's kind of a hassle. However, you know what? It's a blessing to be able to continue to work. That's the most important thing. A lot of people are suffering during this time, so we need to be thankful to the Lord that we can continue on with our lives with no problem, and that's the main thing. We got to be thankful. Now, Robert, you were in the military. Well, you started out as an elementary teacher, but you did 20 years in the U.S. Army. But you always wanted to be an actor. How did you transition into acting from the military?
It was actually somewhat of a slow process. I say it was with several fits and starts over the years.
Yeah.
Being raised back on a farm in the Missouri Ozarks. I always just wanted so badly to be part of that, but had really trouble kind of figuring out how to get from there to where I wanted to be. Not that I would take anything for that experience. It was great. I loved the people. All of that was great. But to get into Hollywood, if you will, was a bit of a challenge. But of course, growing up, I was in every school play, church play. My mother directed the church Christmas programs. And so anything that I could do over the years, and always was trying to figure out, what I could do to sort of break in, if you will. And even when I was teaching school, which was still back in Missouri, I spent a summer in LA back in 1970. And I called up the Chuck Barris Productions and went through 2 sets of auditions and was booked for The Dating Game. So I made my national TV debut in 1970 as Bachelor number 2 on The Dating Game.
Yeah, I remember that show. Oh my gosh, what was the host's name on that show, Robert?
I'm going to have to go back and look too because I haven't thought about that for a while. Chuck Barris Productions was the key thing that I have held on to all these years.
What was it? Bob Hubank, maybe, perhaps?
No,
I'm not sure.
no, it wasn't Bob. And I can see his face, but
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
have the name.
and he was really good too. He was a very good host. I was a kid. I was just a little kid when that show was on. I was probably like 7 or 8. I don't know, but I just remember the show being very funny, and I remember the host actually being very comical. He had a lot of fun making jokes about the about the couples. I wish I could remember his name because he was really very good. But that's awesome that you had your debut there. Um, when you were in the military, did you get an opportunity to do a little acting at that time?
Well, what happened actually is I had gotten into the military, and I actually had a break in service. And my wife and I moved to Los Angeles. This is also in the late 70s, and I had resigned a hard earned regular Army commission, and we moved to LA, and I enrolled in a broadcasting school on the GI Bill and was picking up some extra work and going to workshops and those kind of things. Had some success. Actually signed with an agent at one of the top commercial agents for television commercials in LA. But then we were expecting our first child, and 10 days after our daughter was born, my wife had an aneurysm.
Wow.
And so she went through, well, it was quite a process. I actually had never even heard of an aneurysm. I thought she'd had a stroke. But we got her to St. Joseph's Hospital, and they knew exactly what had happened. And about 10 days later, they had surgery, and it was repaired. She had been semi conscious all that time. And then the night after of the surgery, I was by her bed in a recliner, and all of a sudden, this lady who had not said a word for 10 days started crawling out of the bed. And I was shocked and said, "Where are you going?" And she said, "I'm going to the bathroom." It was as nothing had ever happened. She was completely miraculously healed. And
Wow.
but with all that, and as grateful as I was, of course, that had happened, I was sort of physically and mentally depleted at that point. So we moved actually back to Missouri. We were in debt for the medical bill, which I gladly paid. And I taught school again, then got back into the military and was thankfully able to stay until I retired. But one of the things I did is you could declare in the Army an alternate specialty, and I selected public affairs. So, as a
Okay.
public affairs officer, I had the opportunity to deal with the media. I got to, many times, I was the narrator for ceremonies. I would do production of Army videos and got to coordinate appearances for the general that I worked for the Today Show, Good Morning America, numerous
Wow.
newspapers all over the country. So I felt I was as close to kind of where I wanted to go while still making an income and a living for my growing family at that point, because at this time we had two additional children for a total of three. And I sort of jokingly, but not really, tell people after I retired from the Army, then I could really afford to be a freelance actor.
Well, it's interesting. After you completed your service in the Army, what was it like actually getting on your feet into the acting world?
One of the things that really worked for me, Maurice, was when I was assigned. My last Army assignment was here in the Hampton Roads area to a military post called Fort Monroe, and I was the National Public Affairs Officer for the ROTC program. But I was here for 5 years, and during that time, I actually had gotten an agent and started booking acting jobs while I was on active duty. And as long as I took leave accordingly, if I had to be gone, they were very generous in allowing me to do that. And I actually became a member of Screen Actors Guild while I was still on active duty when I booked a series of national commercials for Hardee's, the restaurant chain.
Yeah.
So I was able to accomplish quite a bit before I actually officially retired from the Army.
Wow. Wow. That's pretty impressive. The Screen Actors Guild, back during your day when you became involved, it's changed so much as far as membership uh, fee to be a part of it. The fee is huge, and I would imagine that was not the case when you started out. I mean, once you're in, you're in. I would assume, but you got in at the right time because it's so difficult now to be in the SAG.
Well, it even was back then. And it's one of those things, Maurice, that if you don't know how to do it, it just seems kind of impossible.
Yeah,
how do I get from here to there? With me, the way that it happened, which is certainly the easiest way,
yeah,
is for me to. I was actually auditioned for these Hardee's commercials. Little did
yeah,
I know that it was a Screen Actors Guild project. So the fact that I was a principal in that commercial, I
yeah.
automatically became a member of SAG. So, well, and I was eligible. That's not true. I was not a member. I actually waited a year before I officially became a member. And but as far as getting all the benefits from that job, I certainly did. One day I got a packet in the mail and it was free health insurance for a year. And I called them up and said, but I haven't joined yet. I'm not a member. They said, it doesn't matter. You earned it through that job. So,
Man,
uh,
that's
so it
cool.
was a year later, though, I auditioned for a show called Homicide on NBC and was cast as a Virginia State Trooper. And that night, I had to drive up to the SAG office and hand over my initiation fee, which still was a pretty good chunk of money in those days. And
Yeah.
but I literally had to do it, or I would not have been cast in the homicide episode.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing, and that's kind of where I am right now as far as being a member of SAG. I've done a couple of auditions. I'm just waiting to see whether or not I win one of them because that would be a SAG opportunity. I would be eligible like you were, and that would give me an inroad. It's so huge to be a part of SAG as far as getting jobs and in the business. Kristen Collier says, "Can you share some stories of how people recognized you for the hearing aid commercials?"
Well, for those of us, I guess those of you rather that haven't recognized me as the hearing assist guy, which is a national television spot, it has been kind of phenomenal. Having been an actor for about 30 years, when I would go out, I'd see people kind of look at me. They kind of think, oh, he looks kind of familiar. Who is that guy? But since hearing assist, which has been nationwide, when I go out, I'll have people walk up to me that did not know me at all and say, hey, you're that hearing aid guy. Can I get a selfie?
Well, I thought you looked familiar, Robert, for sure, man. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. As far as your other acting exploits, my gosh, dude, you had an opportunity to be in the film Evan Almighty with John Goodman and Morgan Freeman and Steve Carell. What was that experience like?
Well, the one of the three, which I so wish I would have had an opportunity to interact with, was Morgan Freeman. He was not on set
Okay.
that day. And the thing too, Maurice, is when you watch that movie, you have to really look for me because I look like I'm a featured extra. But I was actually seated by Steve Carell for 4 days, and I was hired as a principal. So I actually had a week contract as a principal actor. What they did is originally they were going to have extras surrounding Steve in that scene where all the animals invade the hearing room. Those of you that watched it. And then at the last minute, they said no, because of all the excitement, I guess, and they might utter a sound or say words. We're going to hire like 11 actors and give them a week contract, and then we're going to place those around Steve. So we get there to set, and he placed all the other actors. The director did, and he hadn't placed me yet. And finally, he said, "Okay, Bob, I'd like you to sit here." So when I took my seat, there was an empty chair next to me, and I thought, "Oh well, that's interesting." Little did I know that's where Steve Carell was going to be seated. So I was right by his side for that entire like 4.5 days. And John Goodman was on set as well because he was like the chairman of the hearing committee, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, quite an impressive staff of actors that you were in company with. It's too bad you didn't get a chance to meet Morgan Freeman, but nonetheless, I mean, a stellar cast for sure. And tell us a little bit about the film, the Book of Ruth.
The Book of Ruth is actually one of my favorite acting experiences. We actually were on location at a place called Eureka Springs, Arkansas. They have an outdoor pageant there. I don't know since COVID, but before that. And they had lots of sets. They had buildings, they had costumes. So, for a fairly low budget film, it was a great economical place to do it. So, I traveled there. I actually only filmed one day, but as it turned out, my character Obed actually opens the film talking to my grandson, who's actually David, who will soon be king. And then at the end, I also end the movie because I'm actually the grandpa version of Ruth and Boaz's son, Obed.
Okay.
And then you will hear my voice also as the narrator throughout that film. So it was a lovely experience. Sharing Morris is absolutely one of my all-time favorite people, she was Ruth, and we keep in touch to this very day. I was really sorry I did not get to meet the late Carmen, who I was really sorry to hear recently passed away. He had already left at that time, but DJ Perry was also one of the producers, and he was on set. And so I have nothing but really great memories, and it's one of those that keeps showing up a lot. It's a film that ever so often I'll hear somebody, "Oh, I just watched Book of Ruth."
Now, Robert, how can fans see the Book of Ruth? What platform can fans see that film on?
To my knowledge, it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay, got it. Amazon Prime. I highly advise everyone to see that. We're in an age now, as far as the faith-based world goes, Robert, where we're starting to become a presence in the film community. When you look at PureFlix, for example, there's The Chosen. That is an awesome series. I don't know if you've seen The Chosen yet, but that is a beautiful series done by Dallas Jenkins. I had associate producer Justin Overlander on the show yesterday talking about that series. And then also they have Vindication on PureFlix, which is a modern day crime series, which really looks as very much like a Law and Order or Blue Bloods, NCIS, but it is a Christ centered series.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just marvelous the way they bring in the casual viewer. And before you know it, you're in a faith-based film and you're invested into it. And there's the Kendrick brothers, the Irwin brothers. There's so many fantastic faith-based projects that are going on out there right now. So for all those that are watching, please check out the Book of Ruth with actor Robert Shepard. Robert, let me ask you, what is your how does your faith influence you as a performer?
I think it's always sort of the core of who I am, and I really try to evaluate those projects and see how they fit with that. I have probably become a little bit more open to projects that maybe I would not have initially, because I think one of our jobs actually, Maurice, is to try our best to be part of the community and try to show God's love even on projects that aren't faith-based films.
Totally agree. I totally agree with that. And that's something that really needs to be, this is a topic that we could turn over several times, and like a Rubik's cube actually, and turn it but I totally agree with that. Kristen Collier wants you to talk about starring in and executive producing Past Shadows film with Corbin Bernsen.
I will be very, very happy to. It is, we bill it as a supernatural faith based film. It's called Past Shadows, and I am the co executive producer. I also have the lead role of Professor Charles Bando. And we have actually last week we had our what we call our world premiere at the Commodore Theater in Portsmouth, Virginia,
Okay.
and we have signed a distribution agreement with Bridgestone Multimedia, and we are looking at actually early next month for it to be streamed, and hopefully you can buy the DVD copies as well. We're exploring some theatrical opportunities. It's going to be at the Cinema Cafe in Hampton on the 15th through the 18th, and we're working as hard as we can to get it booked into other theaters as well. So it's been a long process. We probably had the idea 4 years ago to produce this film, but as you know, Maurice, with independent films, it can be a really long slog. So we finally, over 2 years ago, we brought in director Peter J. Eaton, who was living in LA at the time. He actually moved back here to Virginia. And once he came on board, we put together our team, started filming in 2018, and then we did some additional scenes in 2019. And it's taken the rest of the time up to now to get the editing, the sound edit, the music score, all of those bits and pieces that make a film complete to get done. So we are beyond blessed that we are here at this point with Past Shadows.
Well, I'm looking forward to the finished product. I can't wait to see it, Robert. That's for sure. I like what you said about, and there's so many different mindsets when it comes to faith-based actors and actresses, as far as how we approach what roles we're going to take, what kind of film we're going to be a part of. There's so many different ways to look at this, but I do love what you said a moment ago about the fact that, listen, there are we can fit in to a film that's completely secular, but our mere presence in the cast can be a witness just by the way that you carry yourself, the way you conduct yourself, the way you interact with your fellow actors and actresses on set, the direct, all those things. I mean, Christ moves within us, and our mission, our great commission, is to go out into the world and bring in the lost. So certainly being a part of films that may not be quote unquote faith based, or the kind of film even perhaps that a Christian should be a part of, well, that assignment is for some Christians. God's called some Christians right into the middle of those situations. God ordained. God ordained. And so I love what you said there, Robert. We have to have a mind of Christ. That's our mission. And, I'm a stand-up comic. I perform in places where it's not very godly in there. But, my job is to go up there and bring the godliness without it seeming as though I'm judging anyone. Hey, look, just telling jokes like everybody else, having a good time. I'm just not going to the places that the other comics are going into. So it's just so many ways. God is like, he's got an endless amount of ways to touch lost people. And then we just have to be open to his leading to do that, whatever it may be. I love that was a great comment, Robert, that you made. as
One of
far as
the things, Maurice,
actors.
I think is so important too that you get to practice, or you should practice, I believe, as a Christian, is treat others as you would like to be treated.
Yes.
Because this industry can be really tough. It can be mean. It's full of rejection.
Yeah.
There's all of those things. So I always so much value every person that's part of a set. From the extras to the production team to the caterer to whoever it is, they're all playing a part, and many times they're really not appreciated so much. So I really like to kind of, if I can, go out of my way to let them know I really value them and their contribution.
Robert, I find your background fascinating. You started out, you grew up on a farm in Missouri, and I'm interested to know how did you come to salvation in Christ?
I was raised up, going every time the door was open to a little Pentecostal church in a little town 3 miles away called Montier. My
Okay.
mother was involved in every aspect of the life of that church, and consequently, I was too. But one of the things that it became clear to me that I couldn't just inherit that experience. I had to accept it and make salvation with Jesus Christ my own. So when I was in
Yeah.
middle school in seventh grade, we had a revival meeting at that little Pentecostal church, and I came forward and made that profession of faith.
Amen. Amen. There comes a time of your own personal accountability where you have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that age of accountability, I mean, probably does come around 12 or 13, where you start to understand, okay, what's really happening around you. You can make that decision on your own. Um, I love that. Now, when you look at acting, Robert, I'm looking at your faith and my faith. I mean, we're faith-based performers. What's the biggest thing you've learned about acting since you've been involved that has actually made you a better actor?
I think someone told me one time, don't let them catch you acting.
Okay.
And that has actually, that little simple thing has become a very important part of what I try to do. So rather
Yeah.
than act, my goal is to be. Yes, I have to bring who I am as part of that process, but I try my best to find the core of that person and make it real. And so maybe it is simplistic, but that has been something that I have found that's been very helpful.
That's a great piece of advice. That is a great piece of advice because we get in our own heads as performers, Robert, and we start. Um, oh my gosh, what's the term I'm looking for? We start. Well, I'll use a football term. We start as a quarterback. You start telegraphing your throws. It's like you're premeditating this before it actually happens. Just do it. Just
Mhm.
do it. Go up there and let it rip. Whether you're doing comedy or you're acting, whether you got to get out of your own head. And I like what you said about don't get caught acting. Be that whatever it is you're trying to pull off or the persona you're trying to portray. Be that thing, and it's a lot easier said than done. I understand that, but we have to get out of our own way and just kind of let it happen. I had the opportunity to do the film Love Different in 2016 with Jen Gotson Chandler,
Uh,
tremendous actress. She is a tremendous. I think you've done a film with Jen as well. I was
one
looking
of
at
my
your.
favorite, one of my favorite people. I've actually had the opportunity to be in three films with Jen,
Okay.
including Past Shadows.
Wow.
She plays my daughter-in-law.
Okay. So you're very familiar with Jen. So I was with her in 2016 in Love Different. Now we had a scene where it required crying and tears. I didn't have to, but Jen and another actor did. So before we started filming, she and that actor started praying. and they prayed themselves up to tears. And I was watching this in total awe. I had never seen anything like that. Um, and I was the antagonist in this particular scene, and I just watched it, and I just said, "Wow!" And that's the benefit when you're doing a faith based film, because everyone's in the boat together about praying and fellowship and Christ and all those things, and that's a huge advantage. But to watch Jen Gotzon do that, along with Anthony Hackett, who directed and starred in the film as well, I was just in total awe, and I just learned something about acting from a Christian standpoint. Like, wow, everything we do should be premeditated by prayer. Everything. And
Amen.
it was just amazing to watch her do that.
It is, and she is. Well, she's just one of the kindest people I know. So I
Yeah,
keep in
she
touch
is.
with Jen and her husband Jim, who he's also in our film as well, and
Okay.
they are truly a blessing to count as friends for sure.
Now, I know you've done a lot of stage, Robert. I'm interested to know which do you prefer or enjoy more, the stage or film?
I certainly like all avenues of entertainment. I would have to say I probably prefer film.
Okay.
Uh, and that in more recent times is what I have concentrated on. But it's all a learning process, and that's the thing that I look back at is everything that was there. And another bit of advice someone told me is take care of the business that's before you and do your best, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
Yes.
So over the years, whether it was a stage play, whether it was a student film, whether it was an extra work, I've probably been an extra in well over 50 major motion pictures over the years. And even there, you can learn something by being on set and getting to watch some pretty big name stars perform as well. So everything can be a stepping stone as long as you keep it in the right perspective, I think, and trust the good Lord to continue to use that and help make the connections and help you to stay with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that I watched an actors roundtable not too long ago, and they were talking about the difference between theater slash stage and film, and the nervousness factor, of course, because you're live. I mean, when you're doing theater, you're live. There are no retakes. You have to nail this in front of a live audience. So the pressure is ramped up. It's more intimidating. And one of the actors on the roundtable, I don't know if you've ever had this experience or not, or ever witnessed this, but one of the actors on the roundtable, matter of fact, a couple of them actually signed off on this, that there are some productions where the director will leave a bucket there to the side of the stage in case the nervousness overcomes you and you may need the bucket. Have you ever been a part of anything like that?
I haven't, but I'm aware of that, and I certainly know some actors that certainly have a queasy stomach and really have to go through a lot before they're ready to go. Fortunately, I don't know, maybe they're better actors than I am, but I've never had to really quite go through all that feeling. The main thing I usually do, whether it's film or whatever, if I begin to feel a little nervous, is I try to calm down and take a deep breath and then just jump in and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Michael Jackson, I think as a 9-year-old boy used to, I mean, he used to just call Earl. I mean, he would just up Chuck before he would go out and kill every time. And there's a great football player by the name of Fred Biletnikoff, wide receiver for the Oakland Raiders, who used to do the same thing. He would go to a bathroom stall and let all of his stress go and just go out there and be a Hall of Famer. But everyone has their methods and their styles. I was about to lead into the question, how do you handle butterflies and nerves before you go on? And you kind of answered that already. But that's something that performers deal with. It's like everybody has their own method and style. I have a comedian friend where you can't come within 5 feet of him before he go, because he's in this zone, and the zone that he's in kind of announces, "Don't come near me."
Mhm.
So we just stay away from the guy, but he has his own. Everybody's got their own method. I mean, for myself, Robert, as a comic, I just go up there, dude, and I just go, "Oh well, here goes nothing," as Jerry Seinfeld would say, and you just let it rip, and you hope that your preparation, your practice, your rehearsing, has all come to this moment where you're ready to go. And
Mhm.
usually you are ready to go. If you've put your time in, if you've prepared, you're more ready actually than you realize. You just got to
Yeah.
go up there and let it rip.
Yes, for sure.
Um, so faith-based films, I think, Robert, and you've been in the business for quite a while. There was a time, I think, you've seen this when faith-based films started to become present in the film industry, and they were pretty bad. I think when the films in the faith-based world started, they were pretty poor. And now where we are in this industry of the Irwin and Kendrick brothers and the shows I was just naming, and I can name a bunch more. They're really greatly improved, in my opinion. But I'd love to hear your opinion as far as what you have observed as far as the improvement in faith-based filmmaking.
I think we certainly, and I think we probably need to differentiate between sort of the independent faith based films as they
Okay.
came along. Because back in the day when I was raised up, I mean, I guess we had 10 Commandments and we had 10 Ben Hur, and we had, wow, those were really something because they had the backing of
Yeah,
major studios and had
exactly.
superstars attached to them. But
Yeah,
then the faith based film was like a whole nother little community that started, and traditionally they're very low budget. Many times, actually, they in fact even I think with the Kendrick brothers, their first film, they used primarily their church congregation as actors, and not to put that down because it's a great film. Their efforts are, but they have continued to build, and we really have a very professional group of people now. And one of the things, which isn't always the best for little independent filmmakers like me, is the studios now have seen the money that can be made in faith based films. So almost all the studios now have a faith based arm. They'll call it something else. They may not see, but you've got two or three different subparts of major studios now that primarily produce faith based films.
wow, I
So
didn't know that. Wow.
so it's moved to the point that even Hollywood, while they back in the 50s they recognized it because there were huge hits, then it kind of they stayed away from it. But now I think they see films like only I Can Only Imagine and the Kendrick Brothers productions making a good deal of money. So now many of them actually have their own sub companies that are concentrating on that, which doesn't really help little independent filmmakers like me too much unless I can get them to take my next project.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I was not aware of that. And when you think about Cecil B. DeMille from the 50s, the Ben Hur, the Ten Commandments, those films were absolutely amazing productions. And as you accurately stated, Hollywood has kind of gotten away from that. They were hugely successful. I was wondering if you have an opinion as to why Hollywood kind of backed away from that.
I think one of the things is for me, I feel unfortunately, I think our country has gone through periods of time of moving away from the that foundation of the Christian Judeo principles.
Great
We
point.
have a lot of secular ism that is there, and everybody has the right to pursue whatever they feel is good for them. But I think there was a price to pay in sort of the faith-based community because there was kind of, oh, I don't want to go there, I want to kind of put that on hold. And but thank goodness we had a group of dedicated artists and producers, if you will, that stuck with it, and they found that there was that audience there. There still is that group of people that are going to come out and support faith-based productions.
I love that analogy, Robert. It's interesting when you think about that period of time in America where, we were a whole lot more God fearing during that era. We were a whole lot more God fearing and a lot more ready to talk about God openly. It wasn't a private thing. It wasn't something that you whispered about. It was kind of understood in America at that time that this is a Christian nation, and so we've really backed away from that mindset. There's so many different groups out there. We don't want to offend. I don't want to say that. I don't want to make anyone mad. That type of thing. That's kind of what we're dealing with in this era. And walking on eggshells because we don't want to offend anybody. And so it's great to see somewhat of a comeback with the faith-based industry and the Kendricks and the Irwins and so forth. And I do believe, Robert, that we are on a comeback. I think God's doing something very interesting right now in America, and things are going to a place that's going to be. I can't really put my finger on it, but when I look at the entertainment world and faith-based, God's doing something very special in the faith-based community, and I'm excited about it. And I wonder what your opinion is, because you mentioned something I didn't even know about when you talk about some of these studios have an arm that's ready for faith-based. That's interesting. I did not know that. Do you think that we're going to see a dramatic increase in budgets in faith-based filmmaking?
I really think we already have.
Okay.
Um, now, not my film, Past Shadows. It was not a big budget,
Yeah.
for sure. But it is not unusual to see, and which would still be low budget compared to some of the big Hollywood productions like Wonder Woman. But it's not unusual to see a faith-based film made for 5 million, 10 million. I think I've lost track of what I could only imagine. I think I maybe read it was 17 million. So
Okay.
there is that recognition that if you've got a good project, there can be the budget to support it.
Do you think secular audiences now are starting to become more interested in faith-based films?
I don't know for sure, but what I do think is that many times the secular world, I wouldn't say never, because if God's part of it, anything can happen.
Yeah.
But many people are not propense to go to church. I think we see church attendance is kind of declining, and I personally feel that's unfortunate. But I do think that you can invite someone, hey, let's go to the movies. So I think you can actually get people to come to see a film that you might never get to go to church. And who knows how that movie may register, how it may speak to them, how it may address an issue that's going to cause them to stop and think, maybe I ought to consider this Christian thing.
So as we look at 2021, Robert, do you think that faith-based films, in your opinion, could do something to improve upon in order to kind of piggybacking on what you said, a moment ago about, God can put me in a secular film and, for his own reason and purposes to draw the lost. Do you think the faith-based world in producing films, do you think there's something they can improve upon in drawing secular audiences?
I think anything that works is great, and I applaud everybody that's out there working. But I do think historically, a lot of faith-based films have been sort of formulaic, if you will.
Yeah.
Uh, it's kind of the same plot that sort of gets recycled, and you may move
Yeah.
to a different state or a different place, but it's the same plot.
Yes.
So I think one of the things that could potentially bring in more of the secular world is to think outside that box and bring other elements into the process, and that's why we bill Past Shadows as a supernatural faith-based film. And that actually is all based on The fact that my character, the college professor, had a terrible thing happen that broke up the family. He's isolated from his wife, his son, his daughter-in-law. He moves to another town, teaches a class called Why Religion, which he didn't really want to because
Mhm.
he's kind of bitter about the whole thing. But one of his students has this hobby of taking pieces of glass and making them. He actually takes them and does things with them. And he gets a piece of glass from the Holy Land, puts it in these glasses, and lo and behold, these glasses you are able, when you look through, to see the past. And that actually helps resolve and bring reconciliation to my character's family. So
Okay.
it's not your typical, there's a lot of good faith based elements there, but it's this supernatural, some might even say sci fi element that really has attracted a lot of people to this project.
And I love the sci-fi element. When you're talking about a faith-based approach, it's like, well, this is sci-fi. There. I love it. It's not common, but it's a great idea. And why not use a sci-fi approach with a faith-based mindset? I love the idea. Anthony Hackett, the director of Love Different, had an idea about faith-based, and I'd love to hear your response to this. But he thinks that there should be two types of faith-based, where you create that typical same old story that you've seen a million times. It could be hokey, it could be cheesy, but it's okay because I get that. I'm fine with that. There's one side of faith-based, and then there's the other side of faith-based, which could be related to an indie film, one in which you're doing right now, where it's strictly for not that yours is, but it's strictly for the secular viewer in order to bring them in and get them salvation. What do you think about that, Robert?
You know, I have always heard that the Lord works in mysterious ways, and
Yeah.
I think whatever it takes to help create interest, to cause people to come in and invest and watch something, and even if it's not the full throated faith based story, who knows? But what it might spark an interest of something. It might trigger a thought. It might trigger discussion because they've taken time to look at it and watch it, even though they might not go to a purely uh, faith-based film. But this one, whatever it is enough different that it caused them to be interested, caused them to maybe inquire, and so it's sort of like advertising. This I'm going on an analogy, Maurice. I don't know if I ever have before, but it's sort of like advertising. It takes, here you watch a commercial here, then you may see a newspaper ad here, then you may see a billboard here, and who knows which of those all causes the call to action for someone to actually buy that product. And I
Yes.
think the same thing can very well be with Christianity and salvation. Someone gives this piece of it, somebody presents another, and then it's a collective effort through the work of the body of Christ that I think ultimately can cause a person to come to grips and hopefully make that profession of faith.
I totally agree with that. And I think where we are right now in Christendom is we have to solve the puzzle of meeting people where they are. And that is something I think causes a lot of us to go, "Oh, wow, I'm not that's not right. I don't think we should do this. I don't think we should do that. We're Christians and so forth." But there was a time, Robert, when we weren't Christians either, and someone needed to meet us where we were so that we
Amen.
could be where we are. And so we
Amen.
can't forget where we've come from. It's not about how it looks. Well, we don't live where what it looks like. We don't live there anymore, but we're making it look like that so we can save our brothers and sisters and get them home. And it's a puzzle right now. It's the I don't have the answer, Robert. I wish I did, but I don't. But I do believe that's what we have to solve. Like, what do we
Yes.
need to do to get this figured out?
And Maurice, one of the other things I think we need to keep in mind, and I don't know if this will help us in developing projects or not, but we have a whole group of people today that really have no underpinning in church and Christianity. They've never
Wow.
gone. They haven't been raised up going to church. You know,
Yes.
in my little community back when I was raised up, uh, even though you had some folks doing things they knew they shouldn't do, but if you ask who believes in the Ten Commandments, everybody said, "Yeah, we believe that." You
Yeah.
know, now we have people, and God bless them, but they hardly even know what the Ten Commandments are. And I don't mean
Wow.
that in a pejorative way, but we can't take it for granted when we reach out to people that they even have the beginning foundation that
Yeah.
you and I probably were raised up with.
That is a great point, Robert. I think we're looking at a completely different landscape in this era, 2021. It's a completely different landscape. You're right. I mean, when I was coming along, certainly when you were coming along, our basis and mindset was church, was God, was discipline, and the whole 9 yards. And so you fast forward 30, 40 years, and a lot of people don't even know what a church service is like. They've never been in one. That the talk of God's not mentioned in their home growing up, and all kinds of things that they're seeing that are unfortunate for young people nowadays. It's so different. The landscape is so different, and so now we have to figure out a different kind of. There's no form. The formula that was used prior, it practically is useless now, almost to a
Yeah,
certain extent, Robert. It's practically
yeah.
useless.
I think that's true. And then, not to keep going on and on, but there's another subset of group of people that unfortunately have been hurt and crushed by the church itself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, consequently, people that uh, that claim to be Christian, many times in families and other things, they really didn't live up to that. So then you've got another group of people that just is saying, "Hey, boy, so we've got to try to reach that and heal that brokenness as well." So it's kind of a twofold thing. You got those that know almost nothing. You got those that thought they knew something but were hurt. So somehow we have to bring overall reconciliation to both of those groups so that we can all move forward in this effort to really seek God.
Yeah, and a friend of mine makes a great point. Growing up, we knew almost all of the hymns, and whether you wanted to or not. I mean, you knew those hymns. I mean, your parents made sure that you were in church service every Sunday. I remember growing up was the same thing. Me and my brother had to go to church. My parents weren't even going to the same church, Robert. My parents sent us to, we had to alternate Sundays, but we had to be there, and I heard a whole lot of God growing up, whether I wanted to or not. But it made a difference, in my decision making later on. I mean, that feeling and sense of God has never left me because it was kind of drilled into me early in my life, whether I liked it or not. I mean, the awareness of God has always been there, and it saved me.
Amen. Amen.
And
Absolutely.
it's interesting, Robert. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you stopping by and chatting it up a little bit on the Maurice Brown Show. Is there any advice that you could leave with young people that are thinking about making the entertainment industry a career?
I usually sort of preface that with, make sure that's your calling.
Yeah,
Make
yeah,
sure that that's what, because it is not an easy path. But if you feel like down deep that that's what God is calling you to, then I believe that you will start taking, there will be things open, and you can take one step at a time, and it can be like building blocks, and ultimately you can continue to move forward. Now, it may not take as long as it did me, because I was literally almost a lifetime before I started actually full time. But again, I think the key thing is if you feel like that's a calling, then in seeking God, I believe that God will equip those whom He's called, and ultimately you can hang in there, and it's an exciting career. So I don't want to put people off by woe is me how tough it is, because you need to be aware of that. But it's also very rewarding, and I can't imagine for myself doing anything else but having the opportunity to tell great stories and get to meet some very creative people along the way.
Amen. Great advice. Great advice. And I may add some advice that my mom has always given me about this business. Don't quit your day job, son.
Yes,
The main
I,
thing is you got to have. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
because I think that is very very good advice. Now, if you can find a day job that is compatible to this business, there has to be some flexibility in that. But that's an important thing to have a backup, have additional
Yes,
training. And I think that's good advice for everyone, because how many stories do you have of the Ivy League educated person that's now driving a taxi cab because they can't get a job? So
exactly.
having a practical, hands-on kind of vocation is, I think, good advice for any young person in the world we live.
100%, Robert. Absolutely. How can fans follow you, Robert, on social media or by website?
On social media, we have a Past Shadows film page that you can go to and get updates on the film. I am certainly on Facebook as well. And then one of the things that you can keep updated on projects is the Internet Movie Database, known as imdb.com. And you can go look up me, Robert Shepard. Technically, it's Roman numeral 4. And you can see the things I've been in, and it'll list upcoming films that I have signed up for as well.
Awesome stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with actor Robert Shepard, who you can see in Evan Almighty, The Book of Ruth. And also, he's working on a film project. Can't wait until that's completed. Be on standby for that. Robert Shepard on The Maurice Brown Show. If you like this video, ladies and gentlemen, like and share and subscribe to the Maurice Brown channel on YouTube. And later on this evening at approximately 4 p.m., you can see a replay of this show on the Creative Motion Network on Roku TV. We've been talking with Bird on the Maurice Brown Show. Robert, thank you so much for being on the show, my friend, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family, my friend. God bless you.
I so appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.